You are listening to The Plot with a Twist, a Burning Hallows production. We are your bookish hosts, Allorah and
Roe.
if you like what you hear, please like, share, subscribe, and give us a quick review on your podcast app or YouTube. It helps us become more visible to other bibliomaniacs. We publish bookish episodes each week on Wednesdays, so be sure to stay tuned for discussions and attitudes that are lit.
Throughout history, there has only been one person who could insult the royals of their kingdom. One with a silver tongue good enough to belittle a king and live to tell the tale. One who can beguile or embarrass and demean. The true mark of a court jester is their ability to entertain the masses at the expense of others, to impart their wisdom without overstepping their station, to dazzle, ensnare, humble, and humiliate. A fine tightrope to balance, and a jester knows his balance is precarious. So what happens when a jester has more than just his life on the line? What if he was working towards an ultimate goal? And what if that goal was upended by a woman who angered him in one breath, but had him salivating for her in the next? Trick by Natalia Jaster is the first book in the Dark Seasons Foolish Kingdoms series. It follows poet, our salacious jester, and Briar, our impassive princess, as they navigate class divide, tradition, and the narrow minds of real fools who live within the Dark Seasons. Today, we get to chat with Natalia and ask her what every reader wants to know. So grab yourself a drink and get ready to hear from the author herself. Welcome, Natalia. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat.
Thank you for agreeing.
We're excited. I'm so excited.
She's very excited.
I'm fangirling. Sorry.
So, Natalia, what made you choose a jester as your MMC?
Yeah, that came pretty much by accident. I don't get inspiration where I just actively look for it. It just comes to me out of unexpected places. In this case, it was twofold. Two things happened around the same time. I was watching the BBC Merlin. All right, it's such a good series. I really loved that series. I think it's from the early 2000s. So it's about Merlin and Arthur before they became this great magician, and Arthur before he became this amazing ruler. And there's an episode where they're visiting a kingdom as guests, and the ruler of that kingdom, I believe it was a queen, she mistook Merlin for a jester.
I
And
remember that
wanted him
episode.
yeah, okay. So she said, "Why don't have your fool perform for us?" And instead of telling her that she's made an error, not wanting to offend her, Merlin decided to perform and he started juggling. And at the time, I was trying to come up with a romantasy that intrigued me. And I wasn't really, like I said, when I actively try and search for something, it doesn't come to me. I was interested in doing some sort of class difference between the FMC and the MMC because I love opposites attract. I knew I wanted one of them to be a royal and the other one to be not that. And I couldn't figure out what kind of vocation. And when she said, "Have your fool perform for us," I was like, oh, no one's ever done a jester. This was granted back in 2015 when I came up with Trick. I kept it in my head. And at the same time, I was still on Tumblr back during Tumblr's heydays. And someone had sent me a DM saying, "You're the queen." I was in fan fiction before I became a published author, so that's where they were coming from. And I just jokingly said, "Oh no, I'm not the queen, I'm the jester." And those two things just planted in my head. Oh, I feel a spark now. I hadn't felt anything. And when I get that firework sensation in my chest, oh my God, I think I have something now. It just came from that, really. And I just love the idea of a jester because I really like breaking rules and I really like subverting expectations. So I was thinking this is something completely different, and yet a court jester has all the qualities of a really hot MMC because you eliminate the dumbass costume And you've got someone who's got moves, who's got kinetics, he's acrobatic, he knows his way around wielding knives, he's intelligent, he's shrewd, he's cunning, he's perceptive, he's got political power, he's got social power, he's funny, he's got a great sense of humor, he's got a way with words. And if we could just give him some hot clothes, change the outfit, get rid of that bell cap, get rid of the motley tights, and give him leather pants and give him guy liner and all these hot things. I was like, oh, this could be amazing. And that's how it started.
I must admit, when I was reading it, I was like, why hasn't anyone done a court jester? Because of that simple fact, right? That he's got so much power. The working class, the middle class, the lower class all love him because he's from them. But at the same time, he can influence kings and queens. And I'm reading it because Allura was like, you have to read it. You have to read it. You have to read it. And I'm like, okay, I'll read it. Calm down. And then her cousin MC was like, have you read it? Have you finished it? We haven't got an update. And I'm like, oh my God, give me a minute. But reading it, I was like, yeah, okay, it makes sense why they were like, you have to read it.
Yeah, he was really the rock star of his time. There's not a lot of research on court jesters, which worked for me to my advantage because I don't like to do research. I avoid it at all costs. And there was maybe like there was one book from the 90s that was the most well-known, I would say, Jester book, and that was the most recent research I could find at the time. And it was really interesting. They were the source of bribery, blackmail, jealousy, and desire. They were essentially rock stars of their time. They were the talk of the tavern. They had all of this. They were also this major influencer with the public. They used humor so cleverly and knew how to wield sharp words and really manipulate the court in this interesting way. And I had read that it's because jesters don't really pose a threat because they present themselves as not taking their intelligence too seriously or their sense of perception too seriously. So they never saw them as any kind of political threat, no matter how critical they got of the crown, politics, or society. So they were able to do it in this way where they just used humor to soften the blow. And kings and queens loved them for this and would sometimes not listen to anybody but their jester politically. So there were instances in this book about kings saying to their advisors, I don't want to hear it from you guys. Just get me my jester. And that was the person that could talk sometimes the monarchy off a ledge, talk them into making certain decisions, giving them advice. And so they were this source of envy from the advisors who would be trying to blackmail or bribe to get to the ear of the king or queen because they thought we have to go through the jester in order to get their foot in the door with the monarchy, which was very interesting. And they had wealth if they were successful at this position. They had sometimes been offered titles. Poet is offered a title. There's a quick moment in Trick when Ginny mentions this to Briar that he was offered a peerage. They were given clothes. They were given property. They had a lot of license.
Okay, so when it comes to Poet as an individual character, and this is going to be spoiler alert, people, where did Poet's individual story come from? Because it gets really interesting when we find out he's a dad.
Yeah, hot single dad.
That threw me for a loop. And then I was like, oh my God, I love a hot single dad.
Exactly. That was also not planned, but it's like I was thinking to myself, okay, the questions I ask myself when I create a character is, why does this matter to them? What's important to them? What's their passion? What's their goal? What's their motivation? What's their conflict? And I had to ask myself, why is he a jester? And how does he feel about being a jester? And those questions led to, is he protecting someone? What is his real goal in this story? I went through the obvious family members that you would think of: a little brother, a mother, a best friend, somebody who mattered to him. And that really just popped out of nowhere. It did come out of research because I had read that back then there were two kinds of fools, and there was the licensed fool, which was the jester, and then there was I use the term born fool or born soul, but I can't remember. I think it was called the natural fool. Forgive me if I'm wrong on this term, but that's what I remember. And those were people who had mental health conditions and were either ironically seen as spiritually gifted by the clergy. If they were blessed with madness, they would say a bunch of things that didn't make sense, but then would come out with this really incredible thoughts that suddenly was brilliant. Or the opposite was they were ridiculed, they were scorned. Sometimes families would sell them for work because they just couldn't afford to take care of them. They didn't know what the issue was with them. Back then, there were no doctors to
Right.
help with health conditions. They couldn't even define it. So I felt, what if he's protecting someone who is the opposite of him, the other type of fool? Somehow that came about that it was going to be his child. I remember I was in the dining room and I was like, holy shit, that's the one. Mother, father, brother, sister, best friends. Somehow it came up to that. And I also was thinking, oh, there's also not a lot of hot single dads in fantasy.
Mm.
I can think of, at least at the time, this was again back in 2015. So that's how that happened.
Yeah, that actually leads into another question. So, one of the things that you're saying is a lot of this is historically based as far
Mhm.
as born fools and natural fools and court jesters. Did you mean to put that theme in the book about how neurodivergence is treated in society? Because I think that was a really big takeaway from the book.
The personal part of this for me is that I have lived with anxiety for over 20 years. And there were times where it was so debilitating where I would be afraid to wake up in the morning. When I woke up, I was afraid of the day. I was afraid something bad was going to happen to me. I thought I'm going to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Something dangerous is going to happen if I leave the house. So I would be afraid of that. I would be afraid of every decision I made as an anxious person. And I never felt normal or peace. I felt like I was outside of society and I felt like I was looking from the outside in. Everybody seemed so peaceful, calm, and happy. And I was just so miserable being afraid just to leave my home and always thinking of the worst case scenario. So it was very debilitating. And there were times where it would just happen for quite a long time, sometimes months, and then it would go away. And then it would come back months later again, out of nowhere, without any kind of triggering. I just felt that way. So I wanted, when I read about families selling another family member, if they weren't able-bodied or mentally healthy, I thought I could put that in. I could make that Nico's condition, and that's why poet's protecting him. Maybe in this world, everything looks perfect. It looks like a utopia because there's no discrimination in any other capacity. There's no matter what your sexual identity is, it doesn't matter in this world. You could be male, you could be female, females could be knights. Females don't have to be mothers, they could be educators, they could be all these amazing types of people. Two queens can rule a kingdom together, the kingdom of winter. It looks like this perfect place where nobody is excluded. But then there's this one thing, and it's not that way at all, that there are people being treated unfairly. I really wanted to focus on that. And the easiest way to do that was to eliminate the rest of it so that there wasn't a big can of worms that I was opening. And I kept trying to think, I really didn't want Nico to have my condition. I'm not quite sure why. Perhaps it was too close to home and I just wanted something in that realm, but not exactly what I had. I think that it came down to a friend of mine who had studied psychology and she was going over some conditions with me. And she said, what about Williams syndrome? Which is what I ended up basing Nico's condition off of, since it's a fantasy and it's based off of Tudor Renaissance England or Elizabethan England. I also went off the fact that they wouldn't know what to call these conditions. So I just never identify it in the series so that I could take liberty, because even though I read testimonials from parents who have children with Williams syndrome and researched this, I still was very careful about not misrepresenting this condition. So I never name it. I took some things and indeed changed it to fit the story for Nico's case to individualize him a little bit more.
I think that was done really well because you didn't have any of those other issues that you usually get in a kingdom. Yes, as you said, the women not being allowed to teach or do anything. They're just potential brides for whoever wants to marry them. Everything else was so open. And when you get to that part, you're like, that's really nasty. And you're not conflicted about any of those feelings because there's no other discriminations, there's no other issues going on aside from that one. So it was done really well. I remember messaging Laura and being like, yeah, I'm not happy with this. This is annoying. I'm getting mad.
Yeah, let me just give you the phone call that I got. So she's reading the book and I get this phone call and she is panicking and going, I can't do it. I cannot finish this book. And I'm like, what is going on with you? And she's, I don't know what's happening. Jenny's just showed up to the festival and I know that Nico is going to be taken and he's followed the streamers and I just can't do it. I need a drink or a stress ball. I don't know.
I did actually go and get the stress ball.
I was cracking up.
Because that's the moment when you find a way to torture your characters. That's the moment where you feel like, oh, I am so excited.
Allura was laughing at me and I'm like, no, you don't understand. Because I quite literally, I was reading it and I was like, okay. And there was these little indicators that I went, oh, I don't like this. No, I don't want, no. And then Briar's just lost it and she slapped Cadence and I was like, yes! And then she's walked off and I was like, okay. And then she got grabbed. And as soon as she saw the grey hair, I was like, nope. I put down the Kindle and I picked up the phone and she's like, you have to keep reading. And I'm like, no, because no. Is Natalia going to pay for my therapy bills? Because no, absolutely not. If anything happens to that little boy, that's it. I can't do it.
I think you get affected, especially parent wise, because we both have kids and it's not just parents, but as parents, it's hard to read about kids being oppressed, tortured, etc. But I did tell her, I said, you have to keep reading because this is where Briar just finds her lady balls. Like she goes feral. So please just keep reading. And she's like, all right. I'm getting stress ball. I'm like, okay, it'll be all right.
I love that story. I think Briar really steps it up there. She does, for sure.
She was amazing in that part. And I think that's truly a great mark of a brilliant writer is that, and look, Allura and I are both people that we've read a lot and I've read some really dark stuff. So being able to get me to go, nope, no, I need a break, can't do that. I was just like, that's really good writing because usually I'm just like, oh yeah, I got this. I said to Laura, did you cry? She was like, there were tears. And I was like, no.
Because I don't cry in books.
No, neither do I.
There's only a couple of books that have made me tear up or shed a tear. So when I told her, there were some tears. She was like, no.
Oh, wow. That's legit then. Yeah. I'm the same, actually. It's rare that I cry in a book. My own are exceptions to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So with the dark seasons and their courts, what was the inspiration behind that? Because Allura kept telling me, you got to read it. These courts are amazing. They're different. And because she was like, it's got courts in it. And I was like, oh. And she was like, it's not fairies. I'm like, okay, I can do that.
I love nature, and that's why nature is always a character in all of my series. It plays a big role. I am very much into sensory perception, so I like to make my worlds very immersive. That's why I include a lot of sights, sounds, tastes, textures, and scents in all of my books. And I use it sometimes to convey emotion. If there's tension, perhaps the chair that she's sitting in is very uncomfortable and hard, for example, and she feels constricted in it. And without saying she's uncomfortable in the scene, that shows it. And so I always have forests in all these things that I just love the natural world. I was like, how are these kingdoms separated? What makes them different? And to me, the most intriguing and simple, but I do try to keep my fantasy structures simple. I usually do kingdoms and worlds that you can pronounce easy, names you can pronounce. I try to keep everything very simple and accessible in that sense. And I thought, what about spring, summer, autumn, winter? The 4 seasons that I could do. I could easily, based off of that, come up with cultures and come up with traditions and fun things like that. It would be easy for me to identify what kind of landscape, fauna, architecture, and all of those good things. So I went with this sort of 4 season universe based off of, again, Elizabethan England, because that's when jesters were at their pinnacle and thriving during the time of Shakespeare. And I love the series Reign. So I thought of all the amazing fashion in that. I want everything that Mary wears in that series. And it's Francis's clothes just fit Poet also really well. So all of this just came into my head because of that. I knew that I could make the magic based off of natural elements, which to me was so exciting and fun. I love when you can derive magic from nature. And so you've got in spring, it's the season of reproduction. So it's a very sexy, sensual, sexual culture of the arts and indulgence in life. And so you have then all of the flora somehow wielding kind of sexual magic, things like that, like aphrodisiacs and desire and inhibitions. But at the same time, there's also vitality and artistry. And so I just thought of the kingdoms that way. Summer, I hate summer. It's my least.
We can tell.
I hate summer. So I just dislike intense heat. And so it made it very easy to identify the antagonist, where he was going to be from. I was like, way to kick summer's ass, because I can't handle this season. So I went up to it's like, I get very cranky in summer. And I thought this is going to be a culture that has a short fuse. But I do the sea and that ambience as well. So I just had all these cultures rolling off things like that. Like autumn is very introspective, very calm, very bookish. You've got that cozy library vibe from autumn, which I think we all feel. We love books all year round, but there's just something about autumn that's, for me at least, and I feel like collectively for other people, has that more bookish vibe, because you're indoors more and it gets colder, so you're curled up with your book. And then winter is very cold and stoic and calculating. So I thought, in that case, let's put that as the realm of medicine and science.
I have to note that I loved the magic system you created in this world, because it was very different. Nobody actually wields magic. The magic is in nature itself, which I thought was brilliant, because I don't think that I've come across another fantasy book where the magic is specifically limited to the landscape that you're in.
Right. I don't know why I gravitate towards that. It just somehow is my thing. I have this, it's the same thing in Vicious Fairies, where that one, I tend to create fantasy worlds that deal with something I am trying to reconcile in the real world. With Vicious Fairies, it's animal welfare. So in that one, they're solitary fairies, and they live apart from the Seelie and Unseelie court, which solitary fairies did. They were just completely neutral, and they stayed in the forest, and they worship fauna. So fauna is almost like their religious deities. And when I create a world, I ask things like, what's their currency? What's their style and their traditions? What is their religion? What do they worship? And in this case with Foolish Kingdoms, it was, let's make nature the religion. And so forests would be like their cathedral and so forth.
All right. So there is a notable difference between Briar and Poet's chapters. And I was speaking specifically about their character voices. Did you find switching between the two voices difficult? Laura was like, no, Poet's amazing. You don't understand. He's brilliant. And obviously Briar's a little bit straight-laced, so she's a little bit more direct. Did you find it difficult going between the two?
Not at all. I never have difficulty with voice. I've been doing this for 10 years, so I have started to finally identify what my strengths and weaknesses are as a writer. One of the ones I'm pretty strong at is differentiating voice. I was studying creative writing, and I remember this really pivotal moment that made me understand voice much better than I had. We were analyzing a story, we were critiquing a story in the group by one of the students, and he held up a piece of paper that had just dialogue between the characters, and he just showed the dialogue, and he said, "Can you tell me, based on this dialogue, which character said what?" To me, that was really helpful because I want people to be able to look at a page of dialogue and know exactly which characters would say this and would say that. Do they speak really briskly and in fragmented sentences? Do they speak very lyrically and run on sentences? Maybe one character likes to quote statistics all the time. Maybe one character is very dreamy and another one second guesses herself all the time. So those kind of things are ways that I find voice can be distinct. When you think of poet, he would say something like, he would use the word crimson. Whereas if I look at someone like the Prince of Winter, he would say red. When I first wrote Poet's Voice, I wrote his first chapter on parchment by candlelight.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome.
I was recently doing an author chat with my friend Laura Thalassa, and I told her this, and she goes, "This is so you. This is something you would totally do." And I said, "Yes, it was." I admitted. I got this parchment-like paper and just lit a candle and started writing. And his voice, I did not expect to be the type that would segue into Renaissance speech as it does, but that's just what happened. And because he's a jester, it was surprising, and yet it shouldn't have been that he was going to be a scene stealer and someone who's going to actually talk to the reader in the very beginning. He introduces each chapter. In hindsight, he's like the performer. He's basically doing with you what he would do with his audience inside the book. He would take you on a story. And I found that quite delightful, that I'd never experienced before with any character. I also find I have a much easier time writing male voices. I don't know why, but I love writing the morally gray bad boy villains. I love their snark. I love their banter. I love their wicked demeanor. And because I identify with Briar as being very bookish, being a bit of a, at least at the beginning, a wallflower and socially anxious, I think I put some of my anxiety in her because I cannot to this day walk into a room full of people I don't know and enjoy myself. The exception is book signings. When I'm at book signings, when I'm at conventions, I feel like I'm with my people and I don't have this problem at all. I turn into poet, but outside of that, if my husband wants to go to something we've been invited to and it's a social engagement and I know nobody there, I dread it. And I felt like that when she walks into spring, not only because she's walking into basically an orgy, she's just very uncomfortable with any environment that she's not used to. And she's a fish out of water and out of her comfort zone. So I identified with her in that sense. I think it was easy to relate to Briar. I tend to, for guys, this isn't the case. I have this natural connection with them. With females, how I get that in voice is that I start to identify the things in them that are who I am, but also things I admire about them that I wish, personality traits also I wish I had. I have one character, Lark in Vicious Fairies, who's very flirty, very outgoing, very feisty. She loves heights, and I'm terrified of heights. So she's the type of person I could never be, but I admire and I wish I could have some of her traits.
Something you mentioned is another question we had for you about the fourth wall. A lot of times poet does speak directly to the reader. Was that intentional or did that just happen?
Yeah, that just happened. He basically owns the book. Even if I had tried to steer him in a different direction, he wouldn't have listened to me. He would have just been, nope, this is my story. I'm telling it. I'm the center of attention. I'm the MMC in this and I'm the performer, so I'm going to do what I want and you're just going to have to follow author. He just took over. He dominated every single chapter. And I was like, okay, we're doing this. I never tried this before. This is basically second person POV.
Mm.
We'll go with that and see what he does from here. Yeah. It's pretty exciting.
I loved that. I texted Allura and I was like, I'm really loving how he breaks the fourth wall. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, at the epigraphs, at the top of his chapters, he's telling a story. And then, spoiler, again, you get to the end of the book and he's telling Briar their story. And I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. Like he's just told their whole story to the reader or maybe to her on their journey. That's just, I loved that because you do have that in some books. You have it at the top. There's these little experts, which I do love. But the fact that he was talking directly to me, I was like, oh, you're awesome.
In a way, yeah, it's like there's this great relationship between the author, the characters, and the readers. And I feel like in this way, you're the implied reader. He's having a connection with you right away and he's seeking your attention. And you could also read it in another way that you are Briar because he's telling
their story.
Yeah, exactly. So when he says to you, dear Briar, it's turning you into her in that way. And I really love that about him. Yeah.
Allura was like, I told you. All I got reading it was just from Allura. I told you so. I told you.
Told you to read this book.
Love it.
It's amazing.
All right. So with Briar's compassion, that was what led Poet to her, obviously, when she meets Nico and the way she interacts with him. Was this a direction you always wanted to take her in?
Yes. I wanted her to have this turning point where she's got this tense relationship with her mother and she lost her father. And I think this fear that she has of losing her mom too and that she doesn't get close to her, I think meeting Nico and Jenny turns that around and opens her to being less afraid of connecting with her mom. There's this link there where she's now changing from not just being a daughter, but eventually becoming a parent herself. And maybe identifying with her mother a bit more. And I think it paves a way for her to forgive herself for what happened when she was a child and helps her to face that. Obviously, it's also important because she sees a side of Poet that she didn't know was there. I remember one of my beta readers left a comment when Nico enters the picture and she said, shit, he has a kid? And that was just, you don't expect it from this character. It's a very vulnerable thing. He doesn't want her or anybody to know about his son. This is very dangerous from his point of view, as she has a ton of power and he doesn't fully know her yet, but they still have this chemistry and connection that happened in the woods that I think helped a lot when she talks about her own family, losing her dad, meeting Elliot. It is very essential for her to have this moment with this family, this very simple time when she's able to appreciate who Poet really is and her own history.
What was the inspiration behind Jenny's particular character?
I really love elder characters that are these kind of sages, this wise sidekick woman. I really want to write. I just love that. There was this character in this series, this BBC series called Lark Rise to Candleford, which I always thought was such a charming, quaint series. And there's a really charming woman in that. And I thought, oh gosh, she reminds me of who I want Ginny to be. Very soft-spoken and a bit feisty. And I really love that kind but feisty elder female character. You're not expecting her to answer the door either when, you know, that he's also got this, he's got his own mama who raised him. I just love that dynamic of a grandma figure. I didn't grow up with a grandma figure, really. My grandparents passed away when I was young, so I never really had that established relationship. So I think this was me also wanting to have that grandmother that Nico has that you're gonna bake cookies with and who's gonna be really and who's also got a really cool, feisty side. I could see Ginny in her younger years having wielded a weapon, and I just love that about her. So I like that archetype. I really want to write another one that's more the matriarch of the family. She has all the good lines.
Mm.
She's very opinionated. I'm thinking like Maggie Smith's character in Downton Abbey, something like that. I really want the grand matriarch of the family who's going to say all this shit that nobody else is going to say at the dinner
Because she
table.
can.
Yes. So that is in my head for a brand new series that I'm planning slowly, and I'm definitely putting the matriarch archetype in there. Grandmother.
Aside from Briar and Poet, she was my favorite. I loved
Oh,
her.
really?
Yeah,
So
I loved her straightforwardness. I was like, because she's just, no. Poet,
yeah,
come on. Don't you
yeah,
can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to me.
exactly. Yeah, she doesn't fall for his kind of raw witticisms and
Mm.
his snark, and she's just give it to me straight. I'm not one of your courtiers who fangirl and fanboy over you.
Yeah.
I know you better than that. I've seen you fall when you were trying to be a jester when you were 15.
Oh yeah, she's cut the shit.
Yeah.
That's her whole character.
I love their relationship.
Do you have a favorite character in Trick?
Yeah, it's poet.
Let me, while we're on the subject of Poet, the way that you wrote Poet, the way that you used rhyme and riddle and lyricism. At first, I was a bit nervous because I was like, oh, please don't make him rhyme all the time because that will
Yes.
get old. But then as I kept reading, he doesn't talk like that all of the time. But then you read 2 or 3 pages and then you get 2 or 3 lines like that. And you're like, that is so genius. I was blown away by the way that he was written. I haven't read anything like it, period. I don't think ever.
I get that a lot. One of the most common things I hear people say if they've tagged me in posts is that they've not read a character like him or a book like
Mm.
this before or the kind of language that's in this book. I quite enjoy the lyricism of Shakespeare. But yeah, you have to
Mm.
be really careful with any kind of personality trait of a character. I do, for example, have a character in my head that I've not read yet, written yet, that they do rely sometimes on statistics. And you have to be careful not to overdo that. I keep a very simple rule. Try not to make this happen more than maybe 5 times, depending on the book length, really. I think I have a character, Juniper in Vicious Fairies book 2. She quotes from fables a lot because you can't trust her own fables. They tend to have this moral lesson at the end of them. So instead of coming up with her own thoughts and beliefs, which she doesn't trust, she always relies on the moral lesson of a fable. So she'll quote that instead. And so with poets rhyming, I was like, okay, he's doing this thing, but I gotta just make sure I rein it in. And you have to withhold, I think, in fiction to make something more impactful because the more you do
Mm.
something, the more diluted it becomes if you just overdo it. Now, this rule I do not follow when it comes to smut because I am a slightly smut obsessed person, which is why the scenes are so long and frequent. That's a different thing. But yeah, his voice with the rhyming and the Renaissance speech where he says nay and all that stuff. I was a little nervous because I was like, I don't know how readers are going to take this, but this is his voice and I can't change it because it won't be real to who he is. So it's an interesting place when you're an author in negotiating between how the character speaks and what the reader's going to accept. Sometimes you just have to learn how to balance that. And I just knew that was a really special part of who he is. I'm not going to change that out of some fear that readers are not going to like it. I love him and he's going to shine like this. You can't be afraid of taking those risks and making the character unique. That's what makes a memorable character is a character who does the unexpected, I think.
And I told Roe when I told her to read this. There's such a huge debate between what is a romantasy, what is fantasy romance, what is romantic fantasy. You have this whole genre debate.
Oh, God, yeah.
Read Trick. I told Ro, I said, this is the definition of what romantasy should be. Period. End of story.
She did say that.
Hands down, because without Poet and Briar, you don't have a story. That's it. They are the story. And with the significant amount of smut that is in Trick, I am not a smut reader, but I read every letter of those scenes.
Yeah, she's not. And when, like, this is what we're saying with the writing, credit where credit is due, because I will read the hell out of all smut. I'm a smut girl. Allorah will skip it.
Sometimes.
Sometimes she's, oh no, there's too much smut. And she was like, I'm reading it all, every single bit.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I think with the smut and the spice, it's very important for me because I've read spice where they tell you what's happening, but they're not telling you what's being felt. It's like, he did this and I moaned. Okay, but what happened physically to you in that moment? Because saying you moaned, it's telling me what you did. It's not telling me what you felt. It's not telling me those physical sensations that happen, much less the emotional sensations. So I feel like it's my responsibility as a romance writer, and romance is my plot. Character is the meat of my story, romance and character. I'm less about plot. And I know that doesn't sound great, but plot is secondary for me because I'm more interested in relationships and how relationships grow, how people build a history together, which is why Foolish Kingdoms is spanning 6 books and 2 decades. Once you get to the end of the series, it's at least 20 years later. Nico is a grown man by the time.
Yeah, Allorah. I hadn't told her because I went on your website and I was like doing a little bit of research and I got down to all the books in the series and I got to the last one and I was like, oh.
Yes, no. Nico is the MC for book 6. So you do this full circle thing where you start with father and with son.
Look at your face, Allorah.
You give it.
I might cry.
The reason I did that is because this is exactly what they fought for, right? It's his right to love and live his life. So you're gonna have that be the closing book. It has to be. I feel like that's the ultimate achievement. But going back to romance being the big thing and the smut, I really like to focus on building those relationships. And I find that means the spice has to be indicative of their relationship arc. It really has to have that emotional depth and a connection with the reader that is just so intrinsic. It's elemental. It's not just for gratification or entertainment. I love to read and I love the tingles, the excitement, the build-up, the anticipation, and the main event. But I want it to also be meaningful and have it be a real turning point for the relationship, depending where they are in that moment. Even if it's hate sex, which I have written, it's really fun to write, but or angry
it's really fun to read too.
Yes, makeup sex, kinky sex, and believe me, you haven't even scratched the surface if you've only read. I don't know if you gotten past Trick, but Briar, the doors have been opened. So things get a lot more experimental as the series progresses, and by the time you get to burn, your jaw will be on the floor by what they do.
Rose, like, I'm definitely continuing the series.
Can we come back? I got to start the books.
Just to give you a tip, there's ruin, which is very helpful. When you get to burn, there is a scene in Poet's Closet, and I've gotten a lot of responses from that scene. But anyway, intimacy is a big part of it. I don't want to just write smut. I want to write intimacy, if that makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. That's why I read every word, because the sex was integral to the story itself. It made sense for their characters.
Yeah.
So that's why I read it all.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah, a crazy threshold. I'm never happy if the smut is less than 10 pages. And to me, that's like the minimum, which is what you got. I think it's almost 30 pages in Trick by the time you get to the ending. And then I had to split it into 2 chapters because I was like, they need to come up for air and I need to switch POVs. Otherwise, people are going to be, is this going to end? I don't want them to think that, but they'll talk about the ambience, the environment they're in, the thoughts that are going through their head, the language they're using, all of that, as well as the actual physical responses that you're having in that scene. It's very important to give that real depth and resonance to the spice, to have that fully fledged, real juicy experience.
I loved the fact that at the end of when they first come together, he's like, oh no, we're not going to do this. And she was like, I'm sorry, what? No, we didn't just do all of this and share this magical experience and you're not going to walk. No, you're not allowed. Sorry, too bad. And I was like,
yes.
Like you've had this beautiful experience together. And then he was like, no, because you've got all this potential. And she's like, what a cop out. Absolutely not. I was like, yep.
No, yeah, she grows. It's a big turnaround from when she first started, where she was afraid to walk into a room where people are being very spring and that welcome feast and being very uncomfortable, to now being this person who is embracing her sensuality, which is why her first spice scene is with herself instead of with Poet, because I felt like that was very important. I also didn't want her emotional growth, her growth with intimacy, to be just about the man. And that's why I wanted that scene to be the first one. She had her first orgasm was with herself, because she's still fantasizing about him, but she's learning her own body. And that was essential for this particular character. When you think about Spice, it's like, what kind of scene is this and how is it appropriate to the character and their relationship? I wouldn't have needed to write this with Lark from Vicious Fairies, because she's been with tons of guys by the time the series starts. She's very sex positive in that way and experienced. She won't need that, but Briar would, and other characters like her would. I feel it's appropriate.
So on to our beautiful little Nico. He's a character. Yeah, I love him. He's a character that enjoyed himself to us straight away. When Allura was like, have you gotten to this part? Have you gotten to this part? I'm like, no, but I feel like I know what's coming. And in my head, it was either, like you said, like a brother or a sister or a child.
Yeah.
Was it hard to write his scene of distress? Because Allura already told you what I did.
No, it was emotionally, like, I felt like your heart melts. But because I'm the author, I know it's going to be okay. So I guess that's a comfort. I knew what was going to happen later on. So I was also more like the vulture, excited a little bit. I had that sort of safety net, but it was also, your heart clenches because he's in this really scary place. And I think when he says to her, I want my papa, it was just like in the cell. It's my God.
I highlighted that bit and went,
so fucking cruel. Can I say that?
Yeah, go. Yeah. Well, hey, I've been really, just to point out, Allura and I, especially me, I'm very bad, but we've been very good this whole, have you noticed that, Allura?
Yeah,
I've barely sworn. I'm like, oh, look at me. Usually I'm dropping F-bombs left and center.
Go ahead. I do the same. The first time, if you've read my books, it's my favorite word. I use it in mass quantities. No problems there. Yeah, it's just, he's so darling. You don't want anything like that to happen to him or to any person that's down there. And that's the heartbreaking. He's embodying the experience of all the other people down there. At first I was like, I'm not involving very many of the condemned here. And then I was like, wait a minute. No, I am. It's Nico, who's the figure here that represents all these people who are oppressed in this world. Yeah, it was not easy. It sucked. But as a storyteller, it's also a little exciting because I know what I'm putting the readers through.
I said to Allura, if he gets hurt in any way, shape or form, I'm going to lose it. And I said to her, I'm like, I've got a brand new coloured Kindle that my husband brought back from America when he was there for work. And I was like, I'll throw it if anything happens to this boy. And she was like, just keep reading.
I will not, I can't. He'll get into dangerous situations, but.
Thank God.
it's not a line that I can ever cross because it'd be too terrible. As he gets older, he is able to defend himself more, which is going to be exciting to see. He will go through emotional turmoil, but not physical. He is going to be the character of his own story, so that just does have to happen. But it'll be fun to see him rise. And there's breadcrumbs, particularly in Ruin and Burn, that kind of predict this. I like to drop breadcrumbs in. So as you move on to the series and you see the rest of the kingdoms, there are little bits and pieces of future books that I will just plant into different areas. In book 3 in Burn, part of the book is set in this beautiful treehouse enclave. And in that place, Briar leaves a note tacked to the tree. And she just says, for the next person who comes here, because it's an abandoned enclave, that note will eventually make its way into book 5 and someone will find it. So those kind of things, someone will be there who knows her, who will say, that's Briar's. Those little things.
Love those.
We love those.
They're fun. So I do have some moments where there's a prediction or premonition about Nico's future. I'm very excited for that. I know it's going to be, I am a little bit afraid because we all see him as this sweet little boy and he's going to grow up.
They all do.
Yeah, but sometimes second generations are better than the first. If you read a first generation and you're like, oh, I really loved his dad, and then you're like, I really want to read him, that'll be amazing.
Yeah, I want to read that dynamic duo of poet and his son together because his son does inherit his father's traits, does learn from his father. And I think one point, and I think it's in book 2 or book 3, he says someday this child is going to be smarter, faster, and stronger than I am. And I love that concept. That's what poet wants. He wants him to be an even greater force to be reckoned with. Just seeing them together when he's older and some of the traits he gets from his father, from Briar. And yeah, that's going to be really fun. And I guess my only nervousness is that people see him as a child. So it is a romance. So there's going to be just as much graphic stuff in that book as there is in Trig, Ruin, and Burn. So hopefully people will be able to separate his childhood self and remember that he's an adult. So this is going to be it's not going to be as subtle. It's not going to be any more subtle than Trig is. Poet will have a harder time with this part.
I think if you can see mine and Allura's reactions, I don't think anyone's going to really have an issue with it.
No.
Poet might be the only one because Poet's not gonna. I'm intending Nico for someone who Poet would not be happy with. Obviously, there's going to be some friction there. No one is ever going to be good enough for his son in his eyes. So there's that. He's going to say, I think he at one point says, he's like my son. No one is good enough for him. But this person really is technically not the ideal person that they would want their son with. So Poet's going to have to deal with that. And I love the idea of
that's going to be awesome.
Daddy getting angry and protective. And one of my favorite lines in the whole series is in book 6, where he's basically saying, if you hurt him, I will just destroy you. And I can already say it. The other person, I can't identify it because I haven't introduced this character yet, but they say, I don't see a weapon on you. And Poet says, Sweeting, you're listening to my weapon. And I just love that.
Oh, that's good.
Don't worry about the blade. It's my tongue you need to worry about because my words will slay you if you do anything to my child. So I just love where it's going to go.
I have to ask, though, Nikki's mom dumped him on Poet's doorstep as a baby.
Right.
Does she ever come back into the books?
No.
Good. Because I was going to be like, that bitch better not show back up.
They considered it for a hot minute, and I was just like, that is just not necessary, and it would be perhaps even expected, and it would create a different dynamic and complications that aren't essential to the series. So it made no sense. She's just a figure in history. It will affect Nico as he gets older. I have a heartbreaking line where he reflects on this and how he translates the message this sends him with someone who is supposed to love him just leaving him. And he is afraid of, at this point, based on where the series goes and what other characters do, how it affects him. There is a growing fear in his mind as he gets older that people leave him. And it starts with his mom, and he says, "Why do people leave me?" And that's something he's going to have to deal with in book 6.
I can understand people who realize they cannot take care of a child for whatever reason, whether it be financial, medical, etc. I respect that, but I would have a problem with her coming in and out. I'd be like, no, you could not handle it, so just stay gone.
Yeah, no,
she's not Allorah's favorite person.
It would open up a can of worms. It would create tension on Briar's part. She's very confident in her relationship with Poet, but it would be extremely hard for her to see Nico's mother come back into it when she's starting to get close with him and he's starting to get close with her. I think it would confuse Nico, so that would create another issue in the story.
Yeah.
It would just everything in a different direction. Obviously, Poet would be very pissed off at what she did, but he would also be like, it's his right to know her. Yeah, so it's then they have to. That would be so complicated.
That's too complicated. We're not doing that.
I feel like that would have been something people expected to happen, but wouldn't have worked for this whole thing. I think that it's more the lesson that Nico's taking from this. And I really just went with a kind of it feels very oddly fairy tale-ish. This whole idea that someone leaves a baby on the doorstep of a cottage. Not in a good way, but that was the gruesome part of fairy tales that would just happen. I was like, is this realistic? This is a fantasy. We'll just go with that.
Have you read Grimm's fairy tales?
Yeah. Yeah.
They leave them for the fairies to take because they're a changeling.
There's some crazy stuff. I took it back when I was in school. I took a feminism and fairy tales class, and I remember being so interested in just how wildly different they are from what you read, what you watch in Disney movies.
Disney movies.
Man, this is way more. We would read 8 different versions across history of Red Riding Hood and how those were interpreted, and Cinderella. That's pretty grisly stuff.
I think bringing her back would have just changed the direction of the whole entire story, because it's so focused on those people that are being discriminated against for no other reason that they just weren't understood. To bring her in takes away from Poet and Briar's story and Nikki's story. So yeah,
two thumbs up.
It wouldn't have worked. There's so much more growth with the ensemble that happens in the series. You're going to get Cadence, Posey, and Vale, I loved the transition from them being these judgy, cliquey, snotty girls who judge Briar. Granted, Briar is also judging them in a way because she doesn't know them, but they aren't very kind in the beginning. And I love when antagonists eventually become allies. So I like that they started a friendship there, and that continues through the series, and they really, all 3 of them grow with her. And I like that. And there's more couples that come into it, because Burn is the conclusion of Poet and Briar's story, but that's not the end of their presence, because then they play pivotal roles. They're like the hub of the wheel, even. Whereas the next couple, you meet them and you find out their conflict in the previous book in Burn. You get their story in book 4. Poet and Briar are still playing pivotal roles in that, and they become a group. And that group gets larger with the next couple in book 5, and then that group expands into this multi-couple thing with Poet and Briar as the leaders in book 6. So that's fun to see all of these characters come together, and Elliot and all of them, they're all still in it. That's so nice. I love when characters stay consistent.
Stay throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
I loved the fact that when she slapped her, after that, she was like, you know what? Yes, I got more respect for you now because you slapped me. I was like, instead of it causing more drama, she was like, yeah, well done. I like that. Put me in my place. Good job. And I was like, yeah, I like you now.
Good job. Now we're getting somewhere.
Yeah. Now there's growth from you.
Yeah, exactly. They go on a fantastic journey, the two of them. And I do love that when there's hostility between two people, but eventually it just changes. And I like that kind of transition.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, it's fun.
Okay, so we have to ask, because you mentioned that when you started writing Poet's character, you literally sat down with parchment, candlelight, and started writing. Is this your writing process, or what is your writing process?
My writing process, I come up with an idea, and it's usually, it can be anything from a small thing, like I want it to be set in this kind of, I want it to be maybe set in, I'm thinking for a future series, the Victorian period, a Victorian fantasy. I'll start with that and I'll go, okay, what, is there anything high concept, any kind of retelling aspect or something like that? And I will just start brainstorming for a few days. I will write down ideas, everything from scenes to character traits to small bits of plot or twists, big picture, small picture things, like everything. It's basically like just a mishmash, crazy bunch of shit on a piece of paper and handwriting that sometimes I can't even decipher once I'm done with it. I'm like, what did I say there? It's written in the margins. I'm running out of space. I'm writing. So I'm like doing that and I get it all on my computer. I start sifting through after a few days of breathing space, what's really clicking, the pieces that are fitting together the best, what's the stuff that is more exciting to me versus passing fancy. And slowly that will somehow become a plot, at least with the main conflicts, bits of the world building and the characters, what their main goal is in the story and what's stopping them. Usually I know by then how the couple gets introduced, what forces them together and what is going to keep them apart romantically. And I'll know probably the three major turning points because I do that classic structure of
the 3 acts.
Yes, the inciting incident, what's the story, what's the springboard, what's the problem, and the 3 twists. Sometimes I will know the main climactic scene and the resolution. Sometimes I won't yet, and that will come, but write my outline from that. Start plugging in all the little extra details. Like I have a scene for here that can go in this area and stuff like that. When do the secrets start coming out? When does the character start to unravel and the smut ideas? All of that just slowly becomes a very broad outline and I start writing. So I'm a bit of a pantser, a bit of a plotter, I think, because I start with a basic outline and start writing and then the outline becomes fuller and more fleshed out as I go along. I'll change things as I move forward because something will happen that I'm like, oh shit, I wasn't expecting that. Okay, this changes a few of the Jenga pieces in the puzzle and keep going. I get my inspiration from places like Pinterest. I'll see some sort of fantasy art of a setting or a character. I'm like, oh, what's their story? That has me thinking. I'll get it from paintings and museums. I'll get my inspiration from music, movies, and Vicious Fairy started with being inspired by the 80s movie Labyrinth. So the first book is a retelling of Labyrinth. If you love The Goblin King, then you might want to try Vicious Fairies book 1 because that's my Goblin King. That's my David Bowie Jareth. But imagine adults, none of the silly puppets. It's a very sexy kind of labyrinth and mountainous. So there's changing elevations, stairs, and all kinds of crazy stuff. And
you remind me of The Babe.
There is the ballroom scene. It ends very differently. It ends the way we would have wanted it to end, or it continues the way we would have really wanted it to continue. So Labyrinth was my springboard for that. It just depends on where my inspo comes from, and then I run with that.
Yeah, I was interested to hear your writing process because I am currently in the writing process. I'm co-writing with a friend of mine. Oh. She's a plotter. I am not. We'll plot something and then my characters go all the way over there, not even close to what he said. But I find inspiration in music a lot. There are Pinterest boards because when characters are created, I need a visual. I have it in my head, but I need a board and to mishmash all these photos of different things so that I know what to pull from to be able to paint it with words. And that's really hard. Like, I don't think people understand how hard writing a book is.
I feel like it's not remotely possible to identify with unless you've actually done it. It's incredibly difficult. Even myself as a reader, when I read something that it's not a book for me because I'm just not clicking, it's usually not because it's a poorly written book. I feel like it's just chemistry. It's like meeting people and either you click as friends or you don't. It's the same with characters a lot of the time. I also have a huge amount of empathy because I know what it took to write that book. Even if it's not my vibe, I don't find it bad. And I appreciate because I know that it's so fucking hard to do. If you even just write a round table scene, which they exhaust me. I love reading them later because I inject a lot of banter and snark and they're fun, but they are long and complicated. For example, with all these characters in a room, they all have different agendas. They all have different voices. They all have different conflicts. They all have different things they want to say and things they want not to say because they're hiding stuff. You got to inform the reader, make the conversation accessible, but also make it mysterious enough that it's exciting. At the same time, you don't want to go into too much exposition, but they still need to understand what's happening. And you need to pace yourself. You need to make it entertaining. You need to make it all of these things in one sitting with multiple characters. This is why I find roundtable scenes to be one of my most challenging ones. The complexities of the relationships, the plot, the world building, to get all of this tight is extremely difficult. And then to write a romance into it, I have so much respect for any author who does this and publishes a work and puts their, not only that, but just the emotional risk you take by, no matter what you write, putting a bit of your heart into it and who you are. You are putting who you are into it, be it your history, your backstory, your personal life, your fears, your passions. It's all in there. And so, in some way, people are judging that. It's a really courageous thing when I see authors publish stuff because they're making themselves so incredibly vulnerable to scrutiny as any artist will. That isn't to say it doesn't warrant criticism because criticism helps make us better when it's constructive and it's very helpful. But I approach it with quite some empathy. You don't know how hard it is until you actually do it yourself.
Yeah, it's like a jester walking on a tightrope.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
It is. It's super fun at the same time, but there's also a lot of challenges. I find that if you just focus and stay in the scene and you just have a good time, that's really important to enjoy yourself and not worry about what people are going to think, at least when you're writing. It's very important that you enjoy yourself. That almost is a challenge for people, I think, just to let loose and have fun and play with this world that you have and explore it.
Yeah,
agreed.
I think as a reader, whenever I've done reviews, and Laura's done the same, if I've not gelled with something, it's not because I think it's bad. It's because it's just not for me. It's probably for someone, just not for me. Whenever I do a review, I try not to go, oh, it was terrible. Oh, I didn't like it. Oh, this was wrong. That was wrong. It was more of a not for me. I get a lot of that with contemporary romance. But you're a dark romance reader. And I'm like, I know. I fully understand that, yes, contemporary is not my thing anymore. But I feel it when you find those reviews, and it must be so hard. Allura's not published yet, but when she is, I'll be like, don't be reading those reviews that are bad because don't listen to them. But it must be so hard to see those reviews where people have just gone, nah. And instead of it being constructive, it's just criticism. I try very hard not to do that because I just think, I haven't written a book. You can say it's terrible as much as you like, but you haven't written one. So how would you know?
I've read and experienced a lot of art that I've really disliked, but I think I can separate and accept the fact that it's very hard to construct a book. And I do have a sensitivity towards that. I, like anyone else, will be sitting reading a book and getting very frustrated about something and start ranting to my husband. I'm like, I can't understand this. This is just missing.
I do that all the time.
But I still be like, okay, this is their artwork.
Yes.
Just not making me happy, and I'm just not jiving. I think it really comes down to chemistry. Granted, there are certain things that you do have to know how to do. You need to know sentence structure, flow, and you do need to make these things accessible. There are things that will make it a poorly written book, but probably it was still written with some heart and
Yeah.
that. I unfortunately, I don't look at my reviews for this reason. I stay away from Goodreads with a 30-foot pole because I'm just like, no, I'm so not gonna look. I only see reviews when someone tags me, and I'm happy about that because no matter what, you're human, and it's going to be painful if you see something, or you're just like, you could maybe even be frustrated, like, how did you not like them? I don't understand that kind of thing. You're just also maybe baffled by it, but it's really just a chemistry thing, I think. It's hard to separate. It's inevitable that it'll happen. It happens to everybody. There's no one book that's gonna please everybody, and perhaps there shouldn't be, because we need diverse books in every way, shape, and form. This is the way to make all of the books out there reach the people those books are meant for. I guess that's the way of saying it.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because we're allowed not to like something, but at the same time, someone else will. And that's why, we've got all these amazing authors now and these amazing books that we get to read. So,
yeah, you want all of that variety because it's just going to make the conversation even more interesting. And the more authors step out of their comfort zone and do something really different, we get more and more different stories that way. You can take any one retelling, then 10 writers will come up with 10 different things. That's also really exciting to see. It gives us all an opportunity to experience. If we're looking for that type of story, we'll find it. And that's super fun. I think there's so many more books being published today in fantasy than in the years when I was growing up. So it's wonderful to see that.
all right. So within all of your series, because you have more than just Trek, you have more than the Dark Seasons, which is your favorite, or do you have a favorite out of all of your Vicious Fairies? Which book is your favorite? She's just turned straight to her bookshelf.
I have two answers to this. I break them down into different categories. So I will say that Touch is I have the most sentimental spot for it because that was the first book I ever published. For context, I'm releasing Selfish Myths right now. They are second editions of first editions that I had already written to completion and I had rebranded. Same thing with Foolish Kingdoms, because Foolish Kingdoms was originally a 4-book series and I had it completed and it was multi-couple. And then I rebranded, added Ruin and Burn, extended it and adultified it. But going back in my history, Touch was published in 2014 originally, and it was my first time taking that leap. So I have a very tender, dear spot for it in that sense.
It's when you broke your author cherry.
Exactly. I had to go slow. I had to get myself all relaxed. Just breathe and think of England. That was the one that was so dear to me in that way. But I would have to say it's Trick, because my favorite, because Poet is, I feel like he's the character of my whole soul, and he feels, and I don't know what my career will have for me. Maybe I create a more memorable character. You always do want to do better with your next book than you did with your last book, or just continue to grow and write better and better work. But right now, I feel like he's the character of my career. I can't think of anyone like him. And when I've asked my readers too, I'm trying to market this book and I need comparable titles. Can you give me some comparable titles? Can you give me some comparable? And they gave me some, but they had trouble. He's just a very unique character. I just love his voice. I love his vanity. I love his heart. I love his wicked tongue. I just love everything that comes out of his mouth. I have such a connection to him. He's the MMC I spent the most time with because I usually don't give a couple more than one book at this point. Him and Briar have three, which is historically not been usual for me. I usually write a multi-couple series. But yeah, I would say you do see elements of him in my other MMCs because I just really gravitate toward either the wicked bad boy with the silver tongue villain or the brooding dark male characters. Jaren, Prince of Winter, is probably in his own class as well because he's very cold and calculating. But or the cinnamon roll, I've written those too, which Nico will be one. Obviously, he's gonna remain a sweetheart who gets captivated by a non-sweetheart, but we'll see how that goes.
We've got a lot of reading to do. We have to be all caught up by the time we get to Nikki's book because I'm telling you right now, I need to know everything. And as soon as that book is out, I'm reading it.
Excited. Yeah, I'm getting to it next year, so I'm very excited. Okay. Selfish Myths will be finished in September. That's my goal. And then I jump back into Foolish Kingdoms 5 and then 6. So that should be next year. The nice thing is the earlier part of next year for 5. And at that point, because I introduced the next couple, you will get the dynamic from Nico and this person because their story will already be introduced and have its own cliffhanger. By 5, you get quite a jump in time. I think in book 4, he's about 10, but we're going to jump pretty far into his teen years for 5.
That's exciting.
I'm excited. I think he's going to be quite a force of his own.
As far as marketing trick, they tell authors, aspiring authors, writers, don't say that your book is unlike anything else that exists. I'm sorry, but I can't think of another book like Trick. Like, I just can't.
No,
yeah,
it's unique.
I notice what people usually say, and I think for readers who don't know me, they need some comparison so that if you like this.
I think the closest thing that jumps out of my head is Quicksilver.
Really?
If Kingfisher were a jester. Do you know what I mean? They have the same sort of snark, wit, quick tongue. They're both a little batty. What do you think, Ro? Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think you're right. You've got to try and stay away from saying unique because everyone's, oh, really, it is. It really. But
my mother loved this book, guys. You know,
in a marketing sense, you'd need to describe it as a book where it literally is about a court jester. If you know what a court jester does, I went and had dinner with a friend on Saturday night and I showed her the intro I wrote for this episode of our podcast. She doesn't read fantasy at all. I said, read this and tell me what you think. Do you get an understanding of what the book is about? And she was like, it's about a court jester. And I went, just do me a favor and read, please. So she read it and she was like, that's true. Court jesters were the only ones that could humiliate or belittle the king and queen and get away with it. But at the same time, they were also there for entertainment and they were cunning and they did give advice. And I was like, that's different. And I went, isn't it? Like, it's completely different. I think you'd have to focus on the fact that Poet is a court jester. He walks that line between entertainment and, I suppose, rule. He doesn't rule, but jesters had a big say in a lot of decisions made by kings and queens.
Opportunistic advisor.
Yes.
He had a lot of power, as jesters did, if they were good at their job. And I read a very funny account of one of them overstepping and being about to receive his sentence for this transgression he committed, where I think he could have gotten his head cut off. He made a joke that had the king laughing, and he got off scot-free because he had said, I used it. Yes, I used it in Trick because I could not help it. He said, choose how you want to die.
Oh, that's
And
right. And he was like, okay, of old age.
yeah, I'd like to die of old age. And I was like, okay, I need to take that. It's a real account. We're just going with historical accuracy here. If that's what the king laughed so hard, he said, "Oh, just get him out of here. Never mind. You're fine."
But
So
you would though, right? That is an awesome call. Choose how you want to die. Okay. Of old age. When I'm very old.
so it was quite funny. Oh my God. You guys have to tell me what you think. Message me about what you think of Ruin and Burn because Reese is the antagonist. And I did write this in 2015. I know Reese means the name Reese is a very much a different significance to most people. Because I've heard people say you had to choose Reese. And I said, I didn't know. I never read the books before this.
Not
Okay.
us.
But I was just like, the way that Poet pushes this man's buttons
He does.
completely pisses him off, and the way he talks about Reese, it describes him. I love his way of insulting this man and getting under his skin. It is very delightful. So you've got this antagonist who's always going to blow a fuse when he's in the same room with and it's quite funny to see.
I absolutely hate because I know that he's a bit of a bad guy. So reading him, I was like, would you, dickhead, just shut up. No one wants to hear from you, you idiot. At one stage, I was reading. It might have been very late at night in bed on the Kindle. If you can immerse me in a book completely and where I am going, oh, for fuck's sake.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was like, shut up. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry. But I think it was when they were talking about the Born Souls and how he was like, we can trade them.
Yeah, and that becomes a bigger issue as the series progresses because now this amendment has been signed and it becomes enacted. So you see that's actually taking its course and how it affects Poet and Briar's journey and how Reese is involved. And it actually is the spark for the next couple, which is really fun because you get point of views that are very different from Poet and Briar. You get the point of view. This is the first time in this next couple, which is book 4, that you get the point of view of a born soul. And that was really important. Nico at this point is too young to give that point of view. You get his later, but he's not in captivity the way that this character is. It's been her whole life almost. And so she is this captive who has been living with this ridicule and oppression. And then you've got the MMC, who is the complete opposite of Poet and Briar, who believes this is the way it's supposed to be. And I thought that was, to me, that was the juiciest thing. I want to go, how opposite can I go?
That's pretty opposite.
You can't get any more opposite than someone who believes everything that, and it's not Reese, don't worry, he's not the MC, but the next MMC in book 4 is the Prince of Winter, who believes what Reese believes, but he is a lot. Poet realizes they're dealing with a lot more of an intelligent adversary in this new MMC, who is an adversary to begin with. He says to her, what's worse than dealing with a stupid villain is dealing with a smart one. This man is the opposite of Reese. He's smart. He's observant, he's calculating, and he believes everything that Reese believes because that's what he was raised to believe. He lives in a society that's very stoic and enters the strongest, the most powerful, and the most vicious to born souls because they believe in experimentation. But that's very harsh. The biggest opposite you could go with is the actual born soul that he representative of the thing he actually despises, which creates the most fantastic friction.
All I'm hearing as you're describing this is trauma, tears, tissues, and therapy bills.
and therapy bills. I'll be making a phone call. Natalia, listen, I got a problem. The bill is $200 and you need to cough it up here.
Yes, I will open my Instagram DMs and be like, why are there 50 messages?
And I am that person. Allura will tell you, I'll be halfway through a book, and if she's read it before me, there will be numerous text message where I'm like, is this bitch for real? No, what does she think she's doing? Or there's other things like, oh my God, would this person just die already? I'm really bad for it. So yes, you may open up to, why would you do that?
I love getting messages like that.
I think she sent me messages like, the king of summer can go suck a dick. Like, okay. So
it on the same thing. So it's just, oh shit, now we've got Reese, but this other character comes in, and it's a very fun dynamic when Jaren comes into the picture in book 3. And there's this shit, we're now dealing with someone who could be a lot more dangerous than the king of summer.
But Briar's not stupid. At the end, the twist at the end of Trick, I was like, oh, you're a genius. That was genius.
Yeah, that was like, she became a little bit of a jester because she cleverly played them. And you see how these two can really become a power couple, and they certainly do. So they're able to navigate all of this very smartly, and it's quite fun to see them grow. They have the moments when they lock horns because they're disagreeing on a tactic, which just creates the best sexual tension because they still have that. It's okay, they're together now, but let's keep that sexual tension going. How are we going to do that? Well, they're certainly going to be at odds with some of the tactics, and she's navigating how to be a ruler and also breaking rules right in front of her people because she's brought Poet and Nico here now. So she's facing this.
Okay, so what you're saying is that Briar maintains her individuality even though she is now in a relationship?
Yes.
And
yes.
Hallelujah.
And, he's the right MC for that because he wants to see her. He's in lots of ways, he'll threaten someone and they'll be like, you can't threaten me. And he'll be like, I wasn't talking about me. I was talking about her. When she's done with you, then I will polish you off. The Poet gets off on her ability to stand her grounds. They have and whenever they work together, it's really a partnership. I've been with my husband for 30 years. Yes.
Oh, we had
our 30 year this year, and we met when we were teenagers. I think that's where it's coming from. I want to see a couple grow together where they both maintain their individuality, but they are also building a history and a partnership. And that is very much an inspiration for Poet and Briar, as well as even things like, I did get inspired also by Rain because I loved the Mary and Frances dynamic. And I think that as much as that series broke my heart, to imagine what they would have been like as a power couple moving forward. And then I think of something like Jamie and Claire from Outlander, where it is really a saga because you see them get older together. And I really want that for them as well. So it's almost, they're also an inspiration in the sense that they're just spanning decades. And so this couple is really, you see them evolve over time. It's cool to see them work together. You've got the one with the silver tongue and the one with the really regal smart brains, the royal and the performer. They work so well off of each other while still having great sexual tension.
And I think that's what makes a great saga. When you have a book series that spans more than your trilogy or something like that, you end up incorporating all these characters throughout 6 or 7 books. If you can have that relationship where your original power couple stays throughout the whole series, it really does enrich the reading process. I haven't done 30 years, but I've been with my husband 23. We were teenagers. We were 19 when we got together. And there have been many times where I was like, you can just go away now. Just let me breathe before we end up having a really big fight.
I love you.
Yeah, but I'll say I love you. Just don't be near me right now.
Yes. I'll see you at dinner time when we're both fed, and then we'll be less cranky.
When I've read my book, and just don't interrupt me because I can't deal with you right at this point in time.
Mr. Jester's walked in at times where I'm like, I was getting to that part. Really? But he's bookish like I am, which is nice because we'll text reading night, that kind of thing. And
I want that.
I'm so jealous.
I love that. He loves books. Our favorite time of the year is the LA Times Festival of Books. So we'll go to that every year, and it's like our favorite weekend because we're going to leave with a stack of books and go to panels and things. He's bookish like me, but we have that relationship that you build, and that has definitely inspired.
So, what made you want to become an author? Or is this a lifelong passion of yours? And now that you mentioned your husband, does he write?
He does not. He's a graphic designer. So he does
all
he
of
does
your
my
covers.
website. Yes. No, he does my website. He does my interior formatting, and he does, things like that. So he helps me with that. I get cover designers of fantasy, but he's involved that way. So it's really fun because when the paperback's ready to be made, I will sit together at the computer and he'll make everything look nice and pretty, or the hardcover. So it's fun. I I think I wanted to be a writer, but I didn't know it or internalize it when I was a child because I loved fantasy and stories. I would reenact them with my brother and be the princess with the sword. And we'd create series with my dolls that they had powers, and it was a recurring series. So we'd have episodes and things. So when it was playtime, we'd continue with that. But I never really internalized it. I think I thought my brother was going to be the storyteller because he was a huge Stephen King fan. As a teenager, he was always into writing stories. It didn't hit me until college when I was trying other things and it wasn't working. One day I was like, looking at classes and I was thinking, why am I taking writing? This all sounds exciting. I think I saw an eroticism and literature class and my brain went, oh my God, that sounds amazing.
That doesn't, I want to do that class.
Yeah, super cool. So I think that was really when I cracked it open and I ended up having that be my main focus. And I took a seminar in reading Lord of the Rings, which was one of my favorite classes. And it went from there. I think my love for the villain, I remember even more distinctly because my childhood was Labyrinth, like I said. So my first villain crush ever was Jareth. And I was
David
a child.
Bowie.
It was my whole existence at Labyrinth. I made my family watch that so many times, and I still watch it at least once a year with my husband. And I remember thinking, I don't know why I want this motherfucker to win this game. I don't know why I want him to. He's a saboteur. He's not supposed to win. He's not supposed to get the girl. Why do I want the opposite? Why do I want this guy to win? He was just so captivating and alluring. And there was just something about him that drew me as a child.
It was David Bowie.
He just, every scene, it was like nothing else existed. The goblin walked into the room. I don't remember anybody else who was in the room. Why does this girl have to be so much younger? This is not fair. I'm still obsessed with that.
Funny.
So I carried that with me, and when I think about why I love the villain MMCs who are bad like that or wicked in some way, it comes back to that man,
David Bowie.
We all love a wicked MC. I'm a villain girl through and through.
You so more than me. But
Yeah.
I don't. Let me clarify, because Ro will read the darkest, like I'm talking entrails, body parts are involved, and I'm like,
That was just an arc, and he had good writing. Stop going back to that.
It's what's stuck in my head that you read that.
Yeah.
You also told me about a book that you read where he has multiple personalities.
That's called Across State Lines by Lauren Beale. Yes, he has multiple.
Yes.
Oh,
and
wow,
I'm afraid to read that. So she reads some really dark stuff. I like the morally gray, but like he's doing it for good reasons. Does that make sense? Like,
gray with a heart of gold.
He's unaliving people, but it's because they're schmex trafficking or whatever. Yeah. Think of a cause.
And I'm just like, hey, he's just unaliving people. And I love that.
Yeah. She's a little bit worried.
Who might like the Prince of Winter then in that sense?
He probably will.
He does some things in front of Poet and Briar that involve lots of blood. And they're not prepared for it. And he does it without any shred of regret or mercy. And
he's my kind of dude.
This man is absolutely absolutely coldly insane and brutal and ruthless and
Nice.
yeah, very ice cold. But it's so fun to see him brought to his knees in that sense.
That's why I love them.
Yeah, exactly. It's fun.
It's fun to watch them get their comeuppance because they're the ones that are so cruel or so mean. And then to have either their counterpart, their partner, FMC, another MC, or whatever come in and completely have them go, all right, fine. I'll still do everything that I normally do, but for you, you're different. I'm like, I love that. I love when they're like,
Yeah.
all right, fine. You get a pass.
Yep.
Just to clarify, you are an indie author.
Yes.
Do you want to be traditionally published?
Maybe I don't know, honestly. I am only traditionally published with audiobooks and translations, which right now it's just Vicious Fairies translated into Portuguese for Brazil. So that's helpful because it's just phenomenally expensive to do those things. I'm lucky that traditional publishers have been able to get the dream narrators for me. I find myself hesitant only because I have so much control. I retain the rights to my books, and my royalties are quite fantastic by comparison. You get significantly less with a traditional publisher, but I would certainly consider it if someone came to me with an exciting deal. They usually go for people who are already making a splash and are really huge. So I'm not anticipating getting any emails.
Want to know something funny?
Sure.
I had my bestie down in Tasmania read Trick, and she is very much a book snob. So she's highbrow when she reads. She likes Tolkien. These are the types of books that really get her going. She likes The Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. I'm like, you have to read this. She's, oh gosh, is it fairies? I'm like, no, it's not fairies. I said, but it's romantasy.
It's very over fairies at the moment.
I said, no, it's not fairies. And she says, but I said, but it is romantasy. And she said, oh, no. And I'm like, no, listen to me. Read the book. So I got her to read the book, and she said, you're telling me that this is an indie author. And she writes like, this is a crime. Why is she not traditionally published? Her writing is so lyrical and whimsical and palatable and easy to understand at the same time. And the magic system is unique, and the entire premise of the story is unique. And it includes neurodivergence. I don't understand why nobody has picked this up. And I'm like, told you to read it. You're welcome.
That's amazing. Yeah. Publishers see this as a business. So they're looking at, do we have authors who have a similar voice to this? They want some guarantee that it's going to be a seller, and who knows what they're factoring in when they do these sort of things. I can imagine that it's also there's fewer spots, I guess. Yeah, because it's like when you get an agent or when you get a publisher, you're competing with thousands of other authors for this one spot. It's not enough to be very good. You have to be great and sellable, and we want to invest all this money. If they're going to invest in you, I'm hesitant with publishers because I don't want to give up my rights unless they're really going to market the book well and increase that income.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily the case that they invest a lot of time and money in every author they sign. They'll do that for the ones they are really pushing, but that's not everybody. It would have to be something where I can do less work and make a greater income. But that's like a coveted, competitive situation, especially with Romantasy being so popular. I don't know. I think it's really important for new authors to keep this in mind. Keep both avenues open and look at what you want from your career moving forward in the long term. What are your goals? How much work are you willing to do? How long are you willing to wait? As well as what are the pros and cons of both indie versus traditional. I always want to stress that because I hate to see any author make a choice they regret later on. And I want people to keep in mind that whenever you say yes to something, be aware of what you're saying no to, because your career is
Mm.
important. Make sure you're informed about all of your choices. It's nice these days that authors have choices because you can self-publish. I tried to get agents before I became indie published, and it was exhausting. I got rejected for my first book, which wasn't Touch. It was time travel that never will see the light of day, thank goodness, because it wasn't what it needed to be. It was rejected by 90 agents.
Wow.
And then my dream agency, which had published my favorite author and my favorite series at the time, actually wanted to do exclusive revisions with this book. It was an 8-month process and it was still rejected, which was the most devastating thing ever. But it was,
Wow.
in hindsight, the right thing. But that's why you gotta be willing to wait a long time if you want to go that route. Either road is good and bad, it just depends on your goals. I just want people to be very conscious of your options before you
Yeah.
make a choice. It's just so important. I'm desperately right now trying to get German translations, which is the thing when it comes to
Mm.
traditional publishing, I can't afford to do because I was recently quoted 5 figures for Trick.
Wow.
And that's how expensive the translations were going to be. I really like them and I wish I could afford that. But for Trick being 150,000 words, and you have to have it translated, but then you have to have an editor of that language also look at it. So there's
Mm.
also that. It's just astronomical. And that's another thing where I think readers assume that our business can be run a certain way and we can make certain decisions that sometimes we just can't. Audiobooks, why aren't there audiobooks available in this? It's because maybe someone can't pay $5,000 to
Yeah.
have a narrator narrate that very long book, and that's just one book in a series. You're talking the price of a car for an entire series, and we're not even talking about if you want to do the duets and stuff like that.
The duets, I've found a lot of people are like, I can't listen to it. And I'm like, I will put my hand up and go, I'm one of those people that really does prefer duet, but I know that it's a lot more expensive than dual or single narration. And I was just looking it up. I think Allora's doing the same thing. You got Charlotte Claremont and Will Thorne.
Yeah,
That's amazing. You were looking it up too, weren't you, Allura?
Yeah. I didn't, because I read the book.
I read the book too.
Do the audio.
I wouldn't
Um,
be able to afford that right now. I was very picky with my publishers. I thought they were going to strangle me because I kept saying no to the voices that they were sending me. And I was like, I need this to be right for
mm,
Poet and Briar. And then they sent me Will, who read the prologue. And I said, okay, I'm going to look at some of the, I was very thorough. I would look at what else they had read. Was it romantasy? What were the reviews like? Did people like them? How are they reading the male and the female? And how are they reading the spice scenes? Because I do not want them to make it sound cringy or
mm.
silly. So I listened to The Ever King by L.J. Andrews.
Mm.
Will Thorne was reading it, and I said, okay, yes, for him. I got some samples from Charlotte for Briar, and I liked her quiet strength and how she read with just such gravity. And I was like, okay, cool. This is finally perfect. And I had a Zoom with them to talk about the characters, which was really fun. That would not have been in my budget at all. For audio, I would have had to go with narrators that were far less pricey. Maybe I wouldn't have enjoyed them as much. It's a very long book, and every series in the book is extremely long. Dare is coming out, which is book 4, supposed to be tomorrow, I think, and it's
Oh,
20 hours
wow.
long. Trick is 17 hours long, and
Yeah.
they're all at minimum that amount. It gets more expensive the more hours that your book is, and that's what people want because who wants to spend their Audible credit on a very short book? It's much harder to sell that unless you love the author that you're reading, but it's more of a risk when the audiobook's shorter. Yeah, so there you go. I hope I can get German translations from somebody. I've submitted and they keep getting rejected. I don't know if it's maybe just a difficult book to translate, but I'm trying to get German publishers to look at it because my husband's from Germany and it's like a second home to me. having my in-laws there and having lived there before, it's the language I want so badly to get.
They've always got such beautiful additions to the Germans. Every time I see one of their books in a regular bookstore, I'm so jealous.
I can't read it.
Gorgeous. It's beautiful. And oh
Yeah.
my God, I'm just crossing my fingers for that.
So you said before that you were a reader. What kind of books do you enjoy reading? A physical or a Kindle or both?
I'm all of the above. It depends on what I'm in the mood for or what format is available to me. So I am pretty open to lots of things outside of just romantasy, which I love. One of my favorite books this year is Whispers of the Deep by Emma Hamm, which I thought was incredible. It made me love reading in a way I hadn't for years. I will recommend this series until I'm dead and buried, which is Captive Prince by C.S. Pacat, because I love her. She has very different writing style than mine, but it's my favorite fantasy series ever. It's got a lot of trigger warnings, so be mindful of that. But
my kind of book.
It's very good. It's Prince of an enemy nation getting captured and sold as a sex slave to the prince of another enemy nation. That prince has his own ruthless court games and agenda. It's not necessarily about smut, but it is very sexy, very tense. It's the most tense book I was like, and that is the longest slow burn I've ever read. So it was torturous, but in a good way. So I love that book. I read contemporary, but I'm very picky. I love Penelope Douglas.
ED.
Yes, I really like her raw, gritty characters. I love how she describes. I find myself influenced by that, by her ability to write these kind of raw, gritty thoughts about life or people in general and emotions. I find that really cool. So I love her. The first book is Bully. I can't remember the name of the series, but book one is Bully. And then she's got Hellbent, which I'm really excited whenever a book comes out of that one. I'm desperately waiting for the next two on that. I am going to confess that I do read some nonfiction, which I know some people don't get into, but I like more personal growth stuff and stuff about writing. I'm looking at what else do I write? Yeah. I think that's it. It's mostly romantasy, contemporary.
Yeah.
Some nonfiction here and there. Some stuff that I've read that I've loved recently was Leigh Bardugo's The Familiar. That was another one that I found fantastic. I did read Morning Glory Milking Farm recently.
Monster Smart, Allure, Monster Smart.
Okay.
I love print, ebook, and audiobook. It depends. I'm listening to Zodiac Academy on audio because that's really super fun. I love their humor. I love the banter. I love just they don't take things super seriously, and you can tell they're having fun. They're not so heavy-handed in everything they're writing. Yeah, and Morning Glory Milky Farm is probably the most jaw-dropping thing I've in a very long time. I am shaking my head and marveling to my husband. I was telling him what's going to okay, she's milking. And 30 pages later, she's still milking.
I've been trying to get Allura to read Monster Smart, and she's just not doing it.
No tentacles for me, please.
Or udders in this case.
Yeah.
I'm blown away. And here's the thing, I'm totally up for whatever, as long as there's an interesting concept or something really surprising. I keep my mind open. But I was just like, and everybody was talking about it, so I was like, I need to see what this is. I read the sample and I was like, holy shit. I've not read too much monster romance, and this was an early introduction to me, and my eyes were just popping out of my head. And
it's probably not the one you should have gone. Look, it's great, but it's probably very full on for you to go into as a starter point.
I need to look at more. I would really like to read Tiffany Roberts, who's also a friend. I recently saw character art of hers, and I was like, I have
Which
to read.
one?
It's a spider one.
Oh my God.
So I just like, yeah, no, she's like looking, what the hell? But yeah, Morning Glory Milky Farm, I have to say, I love authors who break rules. I kept saying to my husband, I hope this author is thriving and so successful, and that she's having amazing success with this, because just for the fact that this is so fucking different and unexpected, and she's a risk taker. Go for it. You have to have balls to write that book. I really marvel at it. Yeah.
So the Tiffany Roberts one is ensnared because I've read it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I am absolutely 100% terrified of spiders. Just terrified. So my husband was like, why are you reading that? Because it's a giant spider. I don't know if you've seen her artwork from it. But
I did. That's what I was like, no, okay. I can get behind this.
Look how Laura's face is like, no.
It's not something I've normally gravitated toward, but when I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, I can get convinced by character art because this looks so good, and I love her so much. She's such a sweet person, so I was like, I need to read her work.
You can tell her when you speak to her that an arachnophobic actually read her book. It was written so well that even though he's a massive giant spider, and there's one part where she wakes up and he's got a hold of her, she was just like, oh, of course, a smile like a giant fucking spider. I was just like, that would have been me. I probably would have passed out again because I would have screamed so loud.
Exactly.
And they've got communication issues because they don't speak each other's language. She's literally on another planet.
Oh, I love that.
Which was amazing. The way it was written was so good. And that was why I just kept reading, even though it was a big spider. And it got to spicy scenes and I was like, oh my God. Nope, I can read this. It's okay. In the end, I was like, okay, next one. I got to read the next one.
I love that dynamic. That makes me want to start it very quickly because I loved that about Whispers of the Deep. Emma has, in that one, it's a merman. I don't know if that's considered monster, but
yeah,
I've written a merman. In that case, I wrote 3 Empresses Fairies, where Elixir is a merman, but with a snake tail. So he's more like a water serpent. I love that in Emma's book, they couldn't understand each other because she's human and he lives underwater. So he was making noises and she was like, I don't know what the fuck you're saying.
That's basically what happens in this one.
I like that. I can imagine that's very hard to convey. I have just communication issues in book 4 of Foolish Kingdoms because the FMC in that one can't speak. Poet and Briar discover this in book 3 when they meet her. They realize nothing's coming out when she's moving her mouth and she's trying to pronounce things really slowly. And they're like, oh, she can't talk. So then she starts writing it. It's difficult to get around that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. All right. So now I got to pick that up.
You do. It was good.
Leave it to Roe to influence authors to read monster smut people.
Of course. And I didn't like, she's mentioned before that she knows Laura Thalassus. And I was like, yes. I didn't say anything. Yeah. I kept my mouth shut because
I saw your face. I saw your face.
Oh yeah, she's a very good friend. We met years ago. If anyone wants to see, I have on my Instagram the live we did together a couple months ago. Just scroll down a bit. I don't post a lot on Instagram, so it's not hard to find. But we did a really fun conversation. Her and I, when we get together, we talk a ton. We saw each other at Romantasy Con. We met years ago when she released Pestilence, and I still had the first edition of Trick. I came across Pestilence on Amazon as a recommendation. It was about only 25% in, and I had talked about this in our recent live stream, and I said, do you remember how we met? And she said, I don't remember. And I said, I read Pestilence, and within 25%, I was already loving it so much that I was recommending it to my Facebook group, and I sent her a DM, and I said, you don't know me, but I'm reading this right now and I recommended it to my readers and I think it's amazing. And I just wanted to say thank you for writing it because I'm enjoying it so much. And then she wrote back and she said, oh my God, guess what's on my Kindle? And she sent me a
awesome
shot of Trick on her Kindle. And so that's how we started talking. And so, yeah, it's been.
Oh, that's such a meet cute.
That is a huge meet cute.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And the more people I can get reading Monster Smart Allura, the better. I'll get you there.
Okay.
Recommended. Give things a try. But yeah.
Yeah, I love Pestilence. I've read too many books in my head. But yeah, I've read all of those and I was reading halfway through it now, but it's Bewitched.
Oh yeah, I saw.
Yeah, so I'm halfway through that as well. I just love her writing. She's amazing.
Yeah, she's great.
And I have to say, as an author, you are probably one of the most down to earth, humble, and accessible authors that I've interacted with, which is amazing.
Thank you so much. That's makes me happy to hear. I'm very comfortable with.
You're very interactive with your fan base, which is great.
Yeah, I try. It's super fun. I sometimes don't know what I'm doing, and I'm like, do they like this? Is this what I should be posting? I always hope that I'm learning, trying to figure out how to connect with everybody because I enjoy it so much.
When Allorah said, "Oh, look, yeah," she said yes. I was like, "Really? Seriously?" I got so excited.
Yeah, I have so much fun doing these. I love chatting with people in the book community, not in
not in real life.
Not in real life. I'm probably gonna download a sample of the. I can tell my husband I finished Morning Glory looking for him, so now I'm going on to spiders. He did ask me recently because I described it to him. I said there was this character art that was incredibly hot, and I was really surprised that I thought so. And then he goes, "Wait, does he have a human face on a spider's body?" And I said, "No, it's an actual spider face. What did you think? There was a human head attached to it? That wouldn't work."
It'd be really weird. Really weird.
When you get to their scenes, get to me on Instagram and be like, guess what? I'm here and this is what I think. I thought it was amazingly written. I thought it was brilliant. But at the same time, I was like, I don't know if I'd be able to do. I'm all for tentacles and tongues and stuff, but that's some full.
Yeah, that's what I love about writing and literature in general. It just breaks open boundaries and it does all these things and it gives you the freedom to. I came from fan fiction where there was a ton of experimentation. You were really just exploring your voice and nobody writes there, at least in my fandom community that I was in. We didn't hold back on anything. So I loved that. And I think that trained me to explore as myself as well and see what kind of expectations can I subvert in this book. And yeah, I think that's had a big influence on me.
All right. Part of being on this podcast is every time we do a podcast, we give a cocktail recipe. But because we have you here, we've actually picked 2 this week. So this week we are doing something really special. We have 2 cocktails in honor of Natalia and her wonderful characters, Poet and Briar. So first we have the Poet Dream. It's brought to you by boxesandbooze.com. And here's what you're going to need. 2 ounces of gin, 3/4 ounces of dry vermouth, 1/4 ounce of Benedictine, 2 drops of orange bitters. So you're going to stir the ingredients with ice and then strain into your favorite cocktail glass and use a lemon peel to garnish. And then our second drink is dedicated to not only the FMC, but is in honor of that sweet little man, Nico, and his friend.
Oh.
And is called the Briar Patch.
Oh, that is amazing. I love that.
Isn't that so cute?
I love that.
So the Briar Patch is brought to you by summitsips.com. And here's what you'll need. It's 1.5 ounces of gin, 3/4 ounce lemon juice, 1/2 ounce rich 2-to-1 simple syrup, 1 teaspoon Marionberry jam, or you can use blackberry jam. So you're going to combine the ingredients in a shaker with ice, shake to chill, and strain into an old-fashioned glass filled with crushed ice. Garnish with fresh berries. That sounds really cute.
Wow.
When I was doing the research, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do 2. I couldn't pick between Poet or Briar. And then I went, hey, Allorah, what if we do 2? And she was like, yeah, sure. And I was like, yay.
I'm not a huge gin girl, but that Briar Patch one sounds good with the lemon juice.
I have to say, poets would love that there's a drink in honor of him. I feel like this is something he would do at a party. And he would be like, it's my birthday. We're going to serve drinks that are just named the poet. Something like that. He would be like, oh, yeah, that would be totally him.
The poet's dream.
Exactly. And he would have a dress code for sure. He would not let anybody in who is not dressed this way. And I have to approve.
Scantily clad.
Yeah.
I had a little giggle at his expense. I know it's terrible, but I had a little giggle at his expense at the end of the book when they dressed him up in traditional. And Briar's like, she could just see that he was so angry about the fact that they dressed him like that.
It was miserable.
Yeah.
He was so miserable. He was like, you've got to be shitting me. This is worse than the ridicule. You have me in motley tights and this fucking bell cap.
This stupid freaking hat. And I was like, that's probably the perfect punishment for him is to wear that, is to be forced to wear that.
Make him wear the thing that he hates most.
Thank you, Natalia, for joining us today and answering all of our questions and putting up with our shenanigans. It's been amazing. It's been amazing getting to know you and the wonderful world you've created. For our listeners, if you want to check out Natalia's books, you can go to her website, www.nataliajaster.com. Her books are also available on Kindle Unlimited and Amazon as well. And if there's anywhere else, I did go onto your website and see, I texted MC and Allure a couple of weeks ago going, hey, did you guys see that Bookish and Spice, which is an Aussie company, did Trick? And I went and had a look and I'm like, damn it, they're all sold out.
What?
Yeah.
Follow them. Keep following them.
Oh, okay.
Yes. A while, but it'll be a while, and I can't promise anything because we haven't gotten it very far yet, but there's a possibility.
Because I did see, I follow them, and I saw it pop up. They were doing like a pan of all their books, and I was like, wait. And I was going to scroll back. It took me about 10 minutes to pause it exactly where it was, but I was like, that's Trick. And I sent it to Allure, and then I sent her another message. I'm like, oh, sorry, it's gone. It's not available anymore. But she's going to get it.
This is the
Stop it.
Versace jacket, which I think is my favorite of the options. I just love, I feel like this just really looks like them. And I love her little, I know what you're doing face because he's got his little finger or her hair twap around his finger. And so I just love this kind of, it just fits them really well. Yeah, it's really beautifully done.
Look at the edges.
It's got the cottage in the back. So it's really beautiful. I was stunned, and this feels like a box, which is amazing. I was blown away by how lovely they made this. It's just unreal.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. I can't say anything for sure yet, but I've been approached.
Yay.
I'm excited about that. If it happens.
We'll be watching.
Yeah, we'll be watching.
Yes, definitely do that.
All right. Huge thank you to all the bibliomaniacs out there listening. Please stop by our Instagram page, The Plot with a Twist, and check out the link tree in our bio where you can find links to us all across the internet, including our social media, most recently video episodes on YouTube and now Spotify, website, shop, and Facebook group. Give us a like or a follow so that you can stay up to date with episode releases and product launches from our book merch shop. We appreciate your support from the bottom of our hearts. Every little bit counts. Tune in next week for another all-new Bookish episode full of magic, mayhem, and maybe just a little bit of smut. Until then, keep reading.